Okay, so we should be live. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. If someone can just post in the comments and just let me know if you can hear me. Hello, hello. Is there anybody out there? Okay, well, the reason I'm asking it is that I'm trying some new solution here. Right. So, I mean, can you see the background thing, the sort of the channel background? Is that what you can see? Yeah. Okay, cool. It's okay. I'm building up to this. So what you should be seeing at the moment is the channel background. So if that's what you're seeing, then it's working fine so far. So yeah, just to let you guys know, you're kind of being a guinea pig for me at the moment. I'm trying this new sort of streaming solution, which lets me sort of bring and merge together different sources. So this is the kind of like the live test, and I'll sort of get into a little bit of why I've gone for this different solution as to the usual thing where I've just got a webcam on. So yeah, let me just see if I can bring in the camera. And hopefully, sort of shortly, can you guys see that now? Am I there? Is this me? Okay, so just while I wait for a bit of feedback from you guys as to if the camera feed is popping in. Yeah, first of all, hello again, guys. It's always it's always good to interact with you guys like this. Yeah, I've got a few things I'm going to cover. Oh, cool. Thank you, Sneferu. Yeah, so what I've got a few things I'm going to cover through today. And I guess a good place to start off is just to be picking up from the competition from last time, whereby, if you remember, I was going to give away one of these Chrysanthescope object things, which I don't know if you guys can see this. But yeah, so last time we did a sort of competition whereby you put in scope in the chats, and we'll do a draw now in real time and see who has won that. So yeah, I'm sorry if I'm a bit sort of distracted here. I'm trying to work out, it looks like a little bit like things are lagging on my side, and I'm trying to work out how well it's coming across on your side. So if like the audio is disconnected from the video or anything, just let me know. Just post in the comments and let me know. But yeah, let's try and do this draw in real time. Okay, so hopefully I can bring in my desktop. I'm trying not to screw this up. Okay, so what we've got here is a random comment picker. So this is looking at the chat feed from the last stream, and it's filtering for the phrase scope. So what I'm going to do is click this button, and we will find out who is the winner. So good luck, everyone. I think I had a quick look through of the number of people who could possibly win, and I think it was something like 40. There was like 40 people in there, so that's a pretty good chance of winning if you put your name in there. So let's hit the button. Fingers crossed for you. And the winner is Jonas. So Jonas, if you get in touch with me, if you send me an email to if you go into the channel banner, there's an email address there, adeptuspsychonautica@gmail.com. Send me an email, we can work out the details, and yeah, congratulations, mate, you've won one of these fine Chrysanthescopes. All right, let's see if we can get back to my desktop feed, or the camera feed, I should say. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm so unprofessional with this. I'm just a bit too last minute. So, Jonas, you've won this fine scope. Let's see if we can get it to work properly on the camera. So, that's not too bad. we go, mate. That's what will be winging its way to you. So, yeah, I'm going to have to get used to this kind of software thing. I'm juggling like a bazillion things at one time. Let's just try and get back to it so I can see the YouTube comments. Like I say, I do apologise for this, guys, but I have to sort of guinea pig it on somebody, and so you're the ones. Cool. So, hello to everyone. Nice to see some sort of familiar names in there. I just wanted to sort of like kick off proper. I came across a quotation from sort of one of my favourite authors and sort of speakers on psychedelics, which is Sam Harris, and he had this quotation that he had in one of his podcasts, which I thought really, like, it just really captured my imagination as a good description of this kind of the depth of this psychedelic space. So I wanted to share that with you. So I'll just read out this quotation. So again, this is from Sam Harris on one of his podcasts, and he's describing, I think it's when he's taken a heroic dose and he was blindfolded. You are wading into a roiling ocean of meaning with a proverbial thimble, and what you bring back in that thimble just cannot begin to indicate the immensity of the experience or its beauty. Even to oneself as an aid to memory, language is next to useless, and the fact that there are landscapes of mind this vast, lurking on the other side of a mushroom, is simply preposterous. How could that make any sense? The scale of the thing is all wrong. It violates every intuition you have about what it is to have a mind and a body in the world. It's as though we lived in a universe where if you reached into your right pocket with your left hand, rather than pull out your wallet, you'd pull out the Andromeda galaxy. There really are no words to describe this experience. And that, yeah, I absolutely love that quote, and I think it, from my own sort of experiences, when you have one of these moments and you just realise the depth and the scale of what is possible here, then yeah, I love that idea of like reaching into your pocket and pull out the Andromeda galaxy. So yeah, I thought I'd share that one with you guys. Okay, as I mentioned, guys, just if there is anything sort of weird going on with the stream, just let me know. Just post in the comments, and we can decide how sort of successful this format is. But how are you guys doing anyway, man? It's been a fucking crazy time since last time I did one of these streams. I've been quite a few experiences of my own gone in. I think since the last time we did one of these streams, I'd had like the 2CB trip. I'd done another mushroom trip, and then I also had a bit of a session last night with MDMA. So yeah, it's been. I feel like I've packed a lot into this last month. I'll just sort of wanted to go back and talk a little bit about some of the videos I'd posted previously. The one in particular was this, the one I did. Let me just bring in my desktop feed. Yeah, so this one around sort of the dark side of psychedelics, which seems to have done really well. That one seems to be very sort of popular with you guys, which is I really liked, because although it was a kind of, I suppose some people could see it as a negative topic, I thought it was a very worthwhile topic. I didn't actually see it as a negative topic. I just saw it as something where there was a degree of honesty which I thought needed putting out there, and so I tried to do that in a way without sort of making it sort of too miserable or too sort of like trying to scare people away with stuff. And yeah, I was really sort of happy with that overall result, and it seems to have sort of resonated with a lot of you guys. I got some really great comments with it, so thanks a lot for that. Also, I'm kind of following that up with the video from I've just posted today, which is more on this ego death solution. So this is kind of following on from that dark side. There's I thought there was a lack of good information around bad trips and sort of what a bad trip means, and I'm seeing a similar sort of thing around ego death, with people kind of like fetishizing ego death as though it's like just some sort of like win-win situation, as that it's something that we should all aspire to. So that's the kind of the background to the video I put out today, and it also ties in with the previous video I did, the interview with my friend Mackenzie. So we've been talking a lot about this, this kind of ego death and sort of bad trips, and trying to build up a sort of hopefully some useful information that kind of dispels some of the kind of the woo and the bullshit around these things. And with my friend Mackenzie, we've actually started talking recently about we're going to do some further collaborations. We're talking about maybe setting up a separate channel, so something that's completely different to Adeptus Psychonautica. This is not going to be necessarily a channel about me and my experiences, but it's going to be a collaboration with her based around this topic of psychedelic integration. So that, when trying to put out together like a collection of information, which is not necessarily like trip reports and stuff, but it's more about how to really focus on this kind of integration topic and hopefully build up like a library of stuff, so that when people have done things like been on ayahuasca retreats or had some sort of really intense mushroom experiences, that they'll have something to help them sort of process that information. It's something we're kind of still working out all the details of at the moment, and I'll be posting some more stuff on that as we get closer to it. But yeah, that's a few things that are in the pipeline. Another thing that I've got coming up, let me just screw it back to the background image, is so again, another one of the reasons I wanted to do this, where I use this different software to bring in different image feeds and stuff, is that what I'd really like to do is that in future live streams be able to bring in and incorporate live guests. So that's one of the reasons I'm playing around with this stuff now. And what I'll be able to do here is that as we're doing this stream, I'll be able to actually bring in a feed from like a Skype call. So what I thought of this, when I think of like a lot of the people I interview, people like Mackenzie, or like Dr. James Cook or Andre from the Quality Institute, or even one of the shaman figures that I talk to, is rather than just me talking to them in sort of and then posting it as an interview style thing afterwards, we'll be able to sort of bring them in as a feed into this, so that as I'm talking to them in real time, you guys can ask questions in real time. And I just thought that would make for a much more sort of interactive experience. So that's why I'm kind of messing around with this kind of new software. It's not just for the sake of it. And again, hopefully with this being a kind of a test for it, we'll see how that works. On the next stream, I'll probably bring in somebody as a kind of a live guest for you guys to ask questions to. And I do have a couple of guests lined up, so I want to let you know what's in the pipeline. So the one I've got lined up for the next stream is a guy called Dick Kahn. And Dick is an author on the subject, or he's written a book all about the DMT experiences. And I actually got recommended Dick as a guest by one of my subscribers, Minty's in the feed here. So thanks a lot for that recommendation, Minty. And we sort of, hopefully I reached out to Dick, and it looks like we've worked out the details there. So the next stream after this one is going to be September the 6th, I think it is. I'll confirm that date as we get closer to the time. And so it will be a stream just like this, but with a live guest, and as well as asking me questions, you can ask this guy questions, and we'll have this sort of conversation between me and him. And I'm hoping that'll be a sort of a kind of a cool experience for us all. And again, possibly with its own set of technical challenges, we'll see how that goes. I'm also would like to do something similar with Mackenzie. So again, my friend who's a sort of Jungian psychoanalyst. So again, she's very big on this topic of integration, and we'll bring her in and sort of again have that sort of conversation in real time. So I'm really excited for this kind of possibility, as long as I can work out all these kind of like technical kinks, and also just get used to this thing. I'm sorry if I'm not looking at the camera. The camera's here, but the screen which is showing me the preview is over here. So I keep looking over here, but I should look here to engage a bit more. So this if I can work out the kinks here, I think this will be a really cool thing. So we'll see how that goes. But the next guest, Dick Kahn, I'll be posting some more details about it on probably on the Reddit, and I'll put some things in the community feed. And let's see how that goes. What else have I got coming up? Can't remember. I think that might be it for the moment. So Yeah, I think that's sort of it. So I'll just take a quick look through the sort of comments. And again, guys, just let me know in the comments if this kind of like feed quality is crappy or if it's not working out too good. But yeah, I think I might need to play around a little bit with my network connection and stuff like that. So yeah, like I see we've got plenty of good names here. So 2020, I just came back from an experience that I cannot describe with words, but it's different from what we know is real, and what you are saying makes more sense to my experience. Ineffable. I mean, yeah, mate. I guess this is in reference to that quotation I just read out. Ineffable is a sort of a word for it. I think you guys might have seen that. I posted a video a couple of weeks ago where I kind of did my return trip to into the mushroom space after having this kind of very, very dark primal experience like a couple of months ago, and that one was much closer to what I've just described with this Sam Harris quote. It was just visually crazy, and even to just describe the visual element of it doesn't really kind of do it justice, because the mental sort of depth of that space was, it was very much like this kind of Andromeda galaxy type thing. I mean, these experiences are just absolutely, the scale is just insane. So Colin, what's your opinions on MDMA? Last night had my first ever candy flip. It was beautiful, and now I don't think I could take LSD on its own again. Yeah, Colin, it's a very appropriate time, mate, because confession time. I was also on MDMA last night, so that's a nice bit of synchronicity to us there, Colin. What are my opinions on MDMA? I think MDMA is pretty goddamn amazing as a substance. Completely different from the sort of the kind of the psychedelic space, in just a completely different caliber of substance. But I credit MDMA as being just pivotal in my sort of personal development and personal sort of like realization of who I was and how I felt about things and how I could communicate those things. And I'll just sort of paint the picture. So when I first did MDMA was when I was a teenager, and this is when I was living back in Manchester. And this was in the height of, the 1990s rave scene, which is, those of you who are from the UK will remember, like, sort of when rave culture was like the big thing. And suddenly, MDMA appeared as like the substance of choice. And so I was already quite into LSD at the time. I'd done a lot of LSD, and then I got hold of some MDMA, and I did it with my girlfriend at the time, and it just blew me away with how it unlocked these feelings, like pure empathic feelings of kind of like love and connection. And when I say love, I mean it in like the very purest sense. I could really feel and express the love for that. I mean, this was my girlfriend at the time, and I really did love her very much. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And then when I did this later on with sort of my friends and like my male friends, again, I just felt this ability to be able to express very sincerely and earnestly just how much I cared for these people who are my friends. So MDMA is just amazing in that regard for just unlocking. They call it more of an entheogen rather than like a psychedelic. It's really much more about feelings and sort of like emotions. A lot of this big empathic element to it. So MDMA I absolutely sort of love. And you mentioned it there in regards to doing candy flipping, and my wife, she is probably on the same kind of page, because she finds psychedelics now. I mean, you might have seen this in one of the recent videos where she talks about how she had this kind of like a long dark night of the soul from doing from ayahuasca. And then what she found is that the only way she could do psychedelics after that was if she was like candy flipping or hippie flipping, which is where you take an amount of MDMA just to sort of, just give you this blissful feeling. And then when you take psychedelics within that space, then you get all the kind of like the headspace of psychedelics, but you're just in this kind of blissed out state of MDMA. So yeah, I think MDMA is a amazing substance. Hippie flipping or candy flipping. So it's candy flipping if you do it with LSD, hippie flipping if you do it with mushrooms. So I've only ever done hippie flipping. I've never done candy flipping. And the idea is that you take I'm trying to remember which sequence you do this in. Yeah, so you take the MDMA first to get you this kind of baseline of kind of blissful experience. And then after I think it's like 45 minutes or something like that, you do the psychedelics. And that will then sort of, you get this moment where you flip from the sort of the bliss of the MDMA into the sort of the headspace of the psychedelics. And yeah, it's awesome. I think it's a kind of a different experience to just doing the psychedelics on their own. I definitely still think there is a big, benefit to doing just the psychedelics on their own. But yeah, man, I think, hippie flipping, candy flipping are absolutely awesome. From Sideroxylon, I hope I pronounced that right. Sideroxylon. What would you recommend on doing before MDMA so that one can clear the usual clutter out of the head and focus on just diving into the experience? I don't know, mate, because if I'm absolutely honest, I find that MDMA it clears that experience for me. It's not the same as psychedelics in that regard, because psychedelics, if you're not in a good headspace before you go into it, then you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to end up in a bad headspace. But what I find with MDMA, it just washes all that stuff away, and I think this is one of the reasons it became such like a popular party drug on, in the 90s and still today, is that you could sort of be at work or school or university or whatever and go, have had a completely stressful day, and then you could go into a nightclub or wherever you're going to take it, like in some sort of one of these big outdoor raves, take MDMA, and it just floods through you, and you just forget all whatever like sort of negativity was there, just washes away. So I find MDMA is just perfect for just this kind of emotional, blissful reset, and it doesn't necessarily need the same kind of work into set and setting as what psychedelics do. Now, I think if you do put the time into set and setting, you can get a much better experience. So, I like doing it sort of, at home, where, just with lots of cushions and bean bags and stuff, and just splatting on the floor and having a playlist of awesome music. But yeah, I mean, it is one of those things whereby I would be much more comfortable being in somewhere like a nightclub or a music festival and taking MDMA than I would do taking psychedelics. Psychedelics I just probably would not do at all in that sort of, like a nightclub style environment, because it's just too many variables going on. It's just too much craziness. But MDMA I think you can pretty much do anywhere. From VXD2K7, have you ever tried smoking DMT while on shrooms? I think I did, mate, yeah. And it was kind of hilariously pathetic because I couldn't quite work it out. I couldn't quite get, if you've seen my video on how I smoke DMT, it requires quite a bit of like hand-to-eye coordination and sort of, just faffing around with these pipes and doing it. So doing that whilst on mushrooms is extremely challenging. I think I did try it once and I got I managed to have like sort of one hit on this pipe, and then it was just like, it was just too much going on. But I'd certainly, I've seen some reports from people saying that it's like they're doing DMT while on mushrooms is like a whole new world. And I think for me, particularly with the amount of mushrooms that I do as a normal dose, yeah, I don't know if I need any more trippiness on top of all that. Like, if you see that last video where I talk about, you know, because I was super into like the DMT space. Last time I did mushrooms, I could not believe how much it felt like DMT. Like literally down to, you know, these. Let me just bring up this from the background. So these symbols that I use here in this kind of Adeptus Psychonautica background, these were like I saw these in my DMT space. These are like very archetypal for me. This kind of, you know, this kind of pyramid symbol and these kind of these smiley faces and this guy, this kind of like I call him Mr. Wiggly. These kind of, but these characters pretty much always pop up when I'm on DMT, and it's there's something about DMT whereby it's very instantly recognizable as like the DMT world. It's kind of, and I think in that way it's different to something like mushrooms and ayahuasca. Certainly mushrooms and ayahuasca, you can get these kind of like, you know, you do get glimpses into this, but the reason why I think DMT is so specific, right, it's just so consistent. Like when you smoke DMT, or when I smoke DMT, I should say, that I absolutely reliably will start seeing these kind of symbols, and I will start seeing the same kind of geometry, and you start seeing, you know, when you have these kind of experiences with entities, then yeah, it's just so consistent that to call it the DMT world just makes sense, because it's very sort of locked in. But anyway, last time I was doing mushrooms, all this stuff, this kind of, these symbols that you see in the background here, these were just popping up within this mushroom shape, and I was getting the same, it was a quick rapid fire flashing through of these images. It was like do, 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 do. And there's like a color palette as well to this DMT space. So I was sat there on mushrooms just like, holy shit, this is like, yeah, you could have told me at that point I was on DMT. And so the idea of then smoking more DMT on top of that, I think would have just like, yeah, completely just blown my mind. So I think if I was in a trip whereby I felt like I could go that bit further, and then I would I would try smoking DMT. But normally when I'm sort of tripping, I'm kind of going for it anyway, and usually I get a kind of a depth of experience whereby, yeah, there's just no more needed on top of that. That would be overkill, possibly, to do DMT on top of that. And I am actually, I'm feeling the call quite a bit at the moment to, I've not actually smoked DMT in quite a while now. And I'm really started like feeling that, yeah, that drawback to experience that DMT world. And I think that was something that played into this mushroom trip I had the other day. It was reminding me of how much I love that DMT world, and this kind of like, you know, this wonderful psychedelic world of what the fuck. It's this theme park of crazy awesomeness. And yeah, I think like that's called me back. So I think I'm probably going to lean towards doing a few DMT experiences, and I'll report back on those, and yeah, let you guys know how I get on with them. From Earthworth, yeah, it's difficult not to be an evangelist of ego death, though, when it's brought so much clarity and value to my life once integrated. Yeah, mate, I would kind of agree. I think this it's very true of all these psychedelic experiences, and I think it can be tricky not to evangelize. And I certainly did. When I first, particularly again with like DMT, when I first did DMT, I was like going up to people like going, oh my God, this thing is amazing. You've got to try this thing. It's just so fucking amazing. And I probably sounded like a bit of a lunatic. And it was kind of like hard to detach the awe and the wonder of that experience just from jabbering like a lunatic. So what I prefer to do, rather than trying to evangelize too much, is to evangelize via my sort of actions, by how I present as a person, and also by being able to sort of like put these experiences into, into a coherent narrative, which is kind of what I try and do with my videos, so that, I'd like to think that somebody could watch one of my trip reports, and even with very limited or like no knowledge of psychedelics, you can hear the story and get that that it is a story, get that this is something where you with a beginning and there's a narrative of going through the experience, and then there's an outcome of the experience. It's not just like, wow, that was trippy. It's like, I did this and I came away and I felt better and I felt like I understood myself more, and here's the insights that were revealed to me, and then there's a closure to it. So there's a whole sort of, that's what I try and do with my trip reports. And I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to do trip reports, because there's a lot of things where people just get on, make trip reports and go, wow, I did this, it was fucking bonkers, it was just insane, end of story. And like, what does that say to anybody? I mean, if you're putting it out there to other people who've had that experience, and yeah, they might be able to go, whoa, yeah, I can relate to that. But what I'm trying to sort of reach is, more the people who've not necessarily had these experiences. I try and, I think one of the people I keep in mind when I do one of these trip reports is my stepmother. And so my stepmother is like a different age generation to me, and she's not had these experiences that I've had. I don't think. Maybe she has. I don't know. Maybe she's doing some crazy shit. But like, say if I take, say, one of my mushroom trip report videos, like the one where I talk about sort of like, the veil breaking and going to this, this, I think the video was called like 7-gram mushroom trip. This was utterly amazing. I would be absolutely fine with my stepmother or even, my grandmother or anybody seeing that video, because it tells that story, and it's not just kind of like a hedonistic, wow, I was completely off my fucking tits. It's, I think, there's something there about sort of the insights I got and how I felt, and how I felt sort of connected to Rachel, and how I felt sort of grateful to all the people in my life. And I think that's a better kind of evangelizing, and to be able to put that out there as, this is the result of my experiences, in that, I've had this understanding more. It wasn't just me being completely off my tits. So yeah, I mean, I think with evangelizing, again, it's tricky not to do, but I would always encourage evangelize by your actions rather than just evangelizing for the sake of it. Let's scroll down a little bit here. Okay. Oops. Yeah, sorry guys, it's a bit tricky to sort of play with these screens. Okay. So yeah, I see there's a few guys have made comments regarding Dick Can. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of him until quite recently, and again, I've got to really sort of tip my hat to Minty, who's been like sort of one of my long-time subscribers who recommended him. So yeah, it looks, from what I've seen of him so far, and from my conversations with him as we were kind of setting up this his appearance on this next stream, yeah, very very nice, friendly, down to earth guy who's, I'd like to think, similar to me, has had these just very far out, ineffable experiences, but just sort of talks about them in a very grounded way. So yeah, I'm looking for. I know he's also from, like myself, he's from England, so we got this, there's a very kind of, I don't know, there's a very kind of English sense of humour, I think, and I'm sort of looking forward to to just seeing what comes out of that conversation. So thanks again, Minty, for recommending him. Let's see. So another comment from Minty here. Would you think there's any mileage in covering MDMA in a video? It would be interesting to get your views, for example. Chance of a bad trip, do's, don'ts, MDMA versus DMT and whatever. Yeah, mate, I was pondering on doing something last night, like recording some footage as part of this this trip I did last night, and then sort of putting that together into a thing. I think the thing with MDMA, which I've not quite worked out how to communicate around it yet. So with psychedelics, there is this this journey that makes it very easy to talk about or very easy to frame. There's a beginning, a middle, and there's an end with all your insights. MDMA doesn't seem to have quite that same trip structure. It's just it just floods you with what's called bliss and empathy. So yeah, I think I'd have to have a think about how I could put that together into some kind of narrative. I think I could certainly cover MDMA from the purely the perspective of what it does, but that's not necessarily how I try and do these experiences. I much like the storytelling aspect of it. So yeah, and I think the reason I didn't do anything with that last night was just because it was me and it was my wife and a friend. And it was quite an intimate experience between us. It was, I don't mean intimate as in anything kinky. I just mean intimate as it was like a very, yeah. It was just I thought the experience just needed to happen within itself. So I didn't want to sort of take away from that experience by starting bringing in things like cameras and stuff, or even by thinking too much about how I would talk about this. So I think I'm going to probably do some stuff on MDMA in the future. Again, like you probably heard me say before, MDMA has got a special place in my heart, just as from part of my sort of upbringing. Yeah, it's a funny one. I don't know if it's not in the same kind of class as like the traditional psychedelics. So yeah, I'll have a think about how I do that. But I'm going to put something together. So yeah, let me have a ponder and I'll come back to you, mate. Okay. So, from Caprimodium, are you planning for Salvia soon? That would make a great follow-up to your ego death video. So, sort of, mate. So, since I started doing these live streams, I've had a few people post about Salvia, and at first Salvia it just wasn't on my radar at all. Not on my radar is the wrong sort of phrase for it. It wasn't. I had kind of like put it to one side as something that was maybe a bit too freaky. I'd seen a few videos about it, and it didn't look appealing to me. But then, after talking with a few of you guys, I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I need to, I need to try this. And at one time, Salvia was very easy to get hold of. And then at the point where I made the decision where I was going to get it, it's just it's a nightmare to get hold of. It used to be like they sold it in head shops and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm finding Salvia harder to source than other, let's say, less legal substances. I am going to be traveling to a couple of countries where I think it's still, so I know it's still legal in like the Netherlands, and I think at some point I'm going to be back in the Netherlands. I think Austria as well, you can still buy it. So at some point, if I'm in one of those countries where I can get it, then I'll get it. But it's definitely now, I've made the decision that I'm going to try Salvia, whereas before I'd made the decision I was not going to try it. So at some point, yes, mate, I will try it, and of course, when I do, I'll let you guys know how that works out. There's a really beautiful comment here from Earthworth. It says, "To me, MDMA acts like magnetic electricity between souls," and I think, yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. It is this. Yeah, I don't think I could put it any better than that, mate. So, yeah, I think that's great. But I will definitely be doing some more stuff regarding sort of MDMA and my thoughts on that at the time. From Colin, have you ever heard of a Jedi flip? I can't remember what a Jedi flip is now. There's so many of these kind of flips. My wife Rachel, I think she's much more clued up on all these different kinds of flipping. So Yeah, I think it's Jedi Flip where it's DMT involved. I can't remember. So let's have a look. Come on. Okay. So, some comments here regarding like the symbology that I was talking about earlier in the sort of the DMT space with the Bwiti mask. Yeah, I think that's exactly what that symbol was. And I did make a video talking about all this different kind of like DMT world symbology. And yeah, I think there's a reason why we see these things. I think it's also a reason why that when you have something like, say like psychedelics, so let's say DMT, and somebody like me who's from Manchester in England and can do DMT, and it brings up these kind of symbols like this kind of Bwiti mask, or and then when I've been to somewhere like Peru, and we're obviously in a much more traditional setting where you've got all this kind of like traditional cultural stuff around you, like the jungle, then it starts kind of, there's something there that starts kind of clicking together of like, there is this psychedelic space, I think, transcends like cultures. It's so that there is like archetypes that pop up in there from things like these traditional cultures, but it's not that it's necessarily coming from that culture. It's just coming from this psychedelic space. I think these kind of symbols are like psychedelic archetypes. And then when cultures, say like the Shipibo in Peru, have sort of tapped into this psychedelic space through something like ayahuasca, which again is just an insane sort of story of how they sort of, out of all the different plants in the Amazon, how they combine these two specific plants together, which would then create this effect of plunging you into this DMT world. Yeah, how the fuck did they work that out? But what I was sort of thinking is that when you see things like these masks, that's what they're doing, is trying to recreate what they see within this psychedelic space. And I think there's a lot of that as well. You see a lot of these like pyramid structures, and then obviously we've got things like, a lot of pyramid structures in things like ancient Egypt and sort of throughout Mexico. And I think that what's happening here is that these cultures are trying to recreate what they see within the psychedelic space. And it's just some kind of archetype that when people dial into this space, they see it. And for me, pyramids was something that was, I remember like one of the first times doing DMT, and what became recognizably like Aztec and Inca imagery. And this was before I'd gone to like Peru or any of that stuff. These kind of like, step pyramids and all this kind of, like all this kind of Aztec symbology and stuff like that. And it made me think, oh, right, yeah, this is what they were doing. They were trying to, like, when they do these, these Aztec paintings or these Aztec murals or this Inca stuff, they're recreating what they saw in that space. But really, this is like some sort of, a common set of archetypes. So, that might, I covered that in a sort of previous video called something like Interpreting DMT Visions. And I think there's something there with these like Bwiti masks and these kind of, symbols, which I think sort of possibly represents like, artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And there's another thing which springs to mind where I remember from one of my last ayahuasca ceremonies where, again, this was a traditional ceremony with a Shipibo shaman. It was Wheeler. It was one of the places when I was in Spain. And we did this ceremony outdoors. And so we're sort of lying on mattresses looking up at the stars. It was just fucking amazing. It was like, we're in Spain. It was a clear night. Could see all the stars. We're in like the middle of nowhere. So it was like really clear skies. All the stars just coming out. And then Wheeler, the shaman, is just singing. And he bangs it out. When he's singing, he's just so into it. He's like totally in this headspace. And I could just see across the sky, across the heavens, this symbolic, archetypal language of the universe. It was like the mathematical equations of the universe, and in a form that is completely inexpressible. And as I was seeing that, it was completely tied into Wheeler singing this kind of traditional Shipibo sort of thing, and I was seeing it represented as symbology. And I talked to him a little bit about it afterwards, and he was saying, yeah, that's the spirits. So what I kind of came to understand is that when you have these kind of traditional cultures and they're talking about spirits, and we talk about it in terms of visions or symbology, I think this is the same thing. I think there's a sometimes when we think of spirits and the spirit world, we kind of think of it in more kind of religious terms, as though they're talking about things like Christian deities or that kind of in that kind of sense of spirit. But I think they use the word spirit as just in this, the things that inhabit this psychedelic realm. So yeah, it's I think it is kind of like a Bwiti mask. So someone else asking about salvia. So yeah, I've not tried it yet, mate, but possibly at some point. Joe Porter, do you know any good reputable ayahuasca retreats in the UK or Ireland? The simple answer there, mate, would be no, I don't. And that's not to say that there aren't any, just that I'm not aware of any. And the main difference between somewhere like, say, UK and Spain is that in the UK, ayahuasca is seen as on the same kind of legal classification as heroin. So there's no kind of ability to be able to publicly advertise that you're doing an ayahuasca retreat or a ceremony. Whereas in Spain, there's it's tolerated, or it's in this kind of legal grey zone. So it's not seen as strictly legal, certainly not in the same sense as heroin or something like that. So yeah, there may be some really good ayahuasca ceremonies and circles and retreats in the UK, but if there is, then they're kind of underground just by nature, because if they weren't, they'd be getting screwed over by the law enforcement. So yeah, I don't know what the legal situation is in Ireland, in Republic of Ireland. I think it's a little bit more liberal there, but again, I don't know too much about it. And with myself, I live in mainland Europe, so for me, going to Spain is kind of easy. So a couple of reasons I like going to Spain, and that's my sort of retreat of choice for Europe, is one, that's where this organisation Ayahuasca Spirit operates from, and so they bring in these traditional Shipibo shaman. So you get all the kind of the benefits of the sort of retreats in South America. This same kind of the traditional songs, the same kind of feeling of healing, and also just how fucking strong the medicine is. When you get one of these, I'm gonna say whenever I've had medicine in Peru, particularly from the jungle, it is just night and day difference to anything that I've had here in Europe. It's a sort of more European ceremony where they breed it themselves. So yeah, so with going to somewhere like Spain, I get that traditional Shipibo shaman, I get this fucking ultra strong medicine, and also you just say, because you're in Spain and it's a warmer country, you get there's just this option of doing these kind of ceremonies outside and under the stars and stuff like that. So would I do one in England? I don't know if I would, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I think that's just me. Given the choice, I would choose to go somewhere where it's warmer and sort of more comfortable, and the whole thing becomes more of a sort of a vacation type thing. But if I find out about anything good in England, I'll certainly let you know as best as I can without sort of grassing those sort of people up too much. From Minty, you make MDMA sound utterly great. Haven't tried it yet. Definitely need to give it a try. Yeah, Minty. I mean, I would say it's quite surprising, because I think, like I say, it was just such a big part of English culture. Like I say, particularly in that sort of rave house scene in the 90s. I'm surprised that you haven't tried it, mate. But yeah, I would definitely think it's worth having a go with. Let's have a quick look. Okay. There we go. So from somebody who's got a name which is like Japanese or something, or characters like Asian characters which I can't pronounce, but I love the characters, man. That's a very cool username. Thanks for your videos, man. Easy to understand, bullshit free. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I try and do, mate. Is yeah, just be able to sort of tell it in a relatable way. So I'm glad I'm glad it resonates with you guys. From Stell, what do you think about traditional ayahuasca retreats in South America versus the more modernized versions that we're seeing in more developed countries? Yeah. So I personally will lean towards the traditional stuff, and I feel like it's a bit kind of. I don't think I'm completely at peace within myself, like not sounding like a pretentious twat with stuff like this. But I've been to a few ceremonies in the non-traditional setting, and you know, like you might have seen on my channel, you know, I'm not like, not everything has to be traditional. I certainly do stuff like mushrooms and DMT in a non-traditional ceremony, in a non-traditional setting. But something like ayahuasca, I think it's quite specific, and I think I wouldn't ever do ayahuasca as a recreational thing. I always do it because I'm trying to do some kind of deep dive into myself, and because it's not recreational, because it comes with all this body load and all this kind of discomfort and vomiting and shitting and blah blah blah, then I think it's better to do that within this structure of the tradition, because yeah, I can't really explain it more than that. It just works better for helping you have those insights about yourself, helping you do that deep dive. You're sort of surrendering yourself to a structure, and the structure itself, this kind of traditional ceremony, can be, you know, completely alien to your own culture. And you know, again, I'm from Manchester. There's nothing in my upbringing which would indicate that, like, you know, a Peruvian South American ceremony would resonate with me. In fact, quite the opposite. You know, I would have probably said, oh, that's just fucking bullshit. You know, why would I want to do this? But all I can say is that there is something there in kind of surrendering to that kind of container and just like letting it sort of carry you away. I have done ayahuasca in these non-traditional things, so where it's been a bit more kind of like what I would describe as kind of happy clappy sort of stuff. So instead of being these traditional shamanic icaros and stuff like that, it was more people playing guitar or people playing sort of like, I've had some ceremonies where people playing like harps and all sorts, like beautiful instruments. And those ceremonies were just exceptionally beautiful and had a lot of kind of like soul and heart in them, but it didn't do the same healing thing for me as what the traditional South American stuff did. And so, and I think with that sort of thing, where if you're going to play guitar or play sort of like drums and sort of singing and stuff like that, I think you can do that with other psychedelics without putting yourself through the discomfort of, you know, shitting your pants or throwing up everywhere. So I would, yeah, that's the way I would kind of separate it up. If there's something that I want to deep dive into me, I would choose a traditional ayahuasca ceremony, and I surrender to that container for it. Something like, yeah, having the more kind of happy clappy singing and so, you know, and again, these can be like, I don't mean to diminish them in any way. These can be like absolutely joyful ceremonies, you know, people singing songs and sort of dancing and playing drums and playing musical instruments. But I think you can do that with something like mushrooms or LSD without all the ejection of bodily fluids. So me personally, if I'm going to do ayahuasca, I'm going to do it in the more traditional sense. I've tried it in the non-traditional, and it didn't work for me in the same kind of way. So yes, that's my take on that still. 2020. All psychonauts agree that there are things being repeated in specific psychedelic space tied to specific substances. Are they different dimensions? Do we actually travel through a portal? So, mate, what my kind of thoughts are, I think there's it's one of these things where I try and like sort of pin down the wording. I think I'll put it this way: psychedelics certainly feel like a different dimension, and I think, but as soon as we start using that kind of wording of talking about a different dimension, then people instantly start thinking of hyperspace gates and the dimension X from over there somewhere. And I think that's a little bit too much of a linear way of thinking about it. Those dimensions can be inside us, like the dimensions of what it means to be a human being, the dimension of what makes us us. I think the internal space is just as, if not more interesting than the idea of this being connecting to aliens or some sort of external dimensions. So that's where I get my sort of viewpoint from. I think that psychedelics are opening up the internal dimension, which is infinitely fucking weird just in itself. I mean, most of us have got very little, when I say most of us, all of us have got very little understanding of our internal processes. It's like I am not making my own heart beat. No, I'm not thinking about drawing breath. I'm not even necessarily thinking about the next word which comes out of my mouth. It's just happening. If I stop for one moment to think about how are these words coming out of my mouth? Is there some sort of thing where I think, okay, Rob, what are you going to say now? I mean, no, even though as I say this, it's just fucking coming out. So there's some kind of subconscious processes there which I am completely unaware of, but it's happening, and it's happening in me. And I think that's what we get with psychedelics. We get this kind of surfacing of the subconscious dimensions, the dimensions that are within us and within our species. And I find that just as amazing and just as infinitely interesting as the idea that it's connected to some kind of external sort of world. So that's my kind of world view on psychedelics, is that it's internal rather than external. And I think, that doesn't make it any less magical. I mean, far from it. All the shit that you've seen me describe in my videos, right? Yeah. The idea that all that stuff, all that kind of imagery, all that sort of iconography, all that symbolism, all that meaning, right? That is all coming from within me by a chemical switch being flicked in my brain. That is insane. That is even more insane than aliens did it. Aliens connected a hyperspace portal to my brain and made me start seeing symbology. Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. That makes sense. But the idea that this is the person I think of as me, as Rob, is really only the surface level of this well of, just psychedelic depth and headspace and archetypes and, the ancestors within me, my own sort of lineages, they're just waiting to be discovered. I think that's much more interesting. So that's kind of what, that was the kind of what was revealed to me on psychedelics. That's how I feel about them. That's what makes sense to me. But something I've said in a few of my videos is I'm open to the idea that this is anything. And to be honest, I don't really care. It's the experience itself is what's magical. The explanation for it, if you came back and said the explanation for this is that it's angels, and this is 100% fact, it's angels, and I'm not religious at all, and I'm okay, it's angels. What does that change about any of my experiences? you know, it doesn't. The explanation doesn't change anything. Okay, if I find out it's 100% fact that it's aliens. Okay, so what? It doesn't. All I'm interested in is like what the experience means to me. But again, I think that the idea, the inner look is much. Yeah, if you stop and think about it for a bit, just like you are you, and then you take these substances, and then this fucking thing, ineffable thing, just happens to you. Yeah, I think that's a lot more interesting. From Trevor, love to hear your thoughts on ketamine and its psychedelic effects, benefits, negativity. Yeah, so I do have some experiences with ketamine, and it wasn't for me. I'll put it that way. I don't think when I did it, I definitely didn't do it in the right kind of setting. So I think there's possibly that's something I could revisit in the future. But all I'll say is that yeah, it was one of those things where I very quickly got the impression this is not for me. So maybe I'll revisit ketamine at some point in the future. I've got some friends who absolutely like love ketamine and talked about it in enough to make me think, oh, you know, maybe I need to give this another go. But yeah, it's not on my immediate sort of radar. I guess, I mean, so yeah, from Stell, we have to modernize, but how do you think we should approach that modernization? Yeah, I honestly, I don't know, Stell, and I don't know if that's my place to say that. So what I mean by this is that, you know, there is this phrase that's around this kind of like psychedelic renaissance of psychedelics like blooming into the mainstream, and you get more kind of celebrities appearing who are talking openly about, you know, their own use of psychedelics and what they got from it. So something's happening there. And then you've got like guys like this shaman Wheeler who I talked about, the guy who comes to Spain from Peru. So this is like someone who's from the traditional sort of Peruvian, you know, Amazon background, and he's bringing that tradition out of the Amazon into the Western world. And he sees that, when I've talked to him about it, he sees that as part of this. Ayahuasca wants to expand out, and psychedelics want to expand out into the Western world. And I think part of that is inevitably going to be that the Western world will then start making their own versions of this kind of what it means to have like a, you know, a psychedelic ceremony in the West. And yeah, what that looks like, I don't know. And I want that, you know, obviously I'm from, you know, England, I'm from the Western culture, and I want to see my culture embrace these psychedelics and sort of integrate it into a way where it becomes part of our own thing, where we're not having to import, you know, necessarily this kind of cultural container from somewhere like, you know, South America, whereby we kind of can make our own traditions there, which is, I think, I don't know why we don't have that, because, you know, things like magic mushrooms and, you know, like, you know, Amanita muscaria mushrooms, these are like very European psychedelics. So it's one thing to have ayahuasca, you know, from the jungle that we're kind of like importing in. But yeah, why don't we have our own cultural traditions around the psychedelics which are native to our world? And yeah, I have no idea what that would look like. Again, I don't know if the kind of happy clappiness of what I talked about before, if that's the way to go. But I think that would be something, a challenge I would put out there to people, you know, to possibly like the shamans of Western culture. Like, how can we make this? How can we surface our own traditions and sort of, yeah, make something there which is as integrated to our culture as ayahuasca is to South America. And I'll sort of leave it to those guys to see how that sort of develops. again from Stella, I hope capitalism doesn't corrupt those practices the way it does with so many other things. Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be that balance there. So personally, I think I don't think capitalism itself is inherently bad. You know, capitalism gives us things like the computer that I'm using to talk to you guys now. But yeah, certainly there is this risk of you're going to get people doing this for the right reasons and being able to make some kind of income from it. And then you're always going to get someone who tries to capitalize on that and just sort of milk it. Yeah, I think that's certainly been the case with a few of these kind of Western ayahuasca ceremonies I've gone to where particularly when you've heard me talk about like Inner Mastery, which is a kind of ayahuasca organization I don't like very much at all because I think it is just unchecked capitalism and just milking this, you know, the beauty of this world just for everything they can get out of it. So yeah, we'll have to sort of, it's something I think we as a community will have to try and keep in check. And yeah, and I'll certainly try and do my part of that by calling out, you know, which organisations I think are good and the ones which I think are just, yeah, milking it for what they get. From Jin Russo, did you ever experience a bad trip on LSD? What it felt like? Yeah, mate, I think it's probably something I'll talk about at another time because I know we're getting a bit short for time on this one. But I will just say I have had a bad trip on LSD. In fact, I will tell you that my very first trip on LSD was pretty fucking bad. And it's fairly incredible that I actually went back and tried it again after that first trip because it was a nightmare. And yeah, maybe I'll talk about that we'll talk about that on a future one. So yeah, last couple of questions because I know we kind of run out of time. But from Carpoimodium, Rob, do you watch Rick and Morty? I know you enjoyed the Midnight Gospel. Yeah, so no, I do watch Rick and Morty. I fucking love Rick and Morty. It's one of the things that we do as a family. So with my wife and my kids is that we sit down and we watch animation together. And one of the things we watch is Rick and Morty, which might be a little bit inappropriate for sort of like kids of my age, but they love it. It's just so funny. It's just fucking, you know, it's one of those things where we can watch it as a family and the kids love it. And like me and Rachel as adults, we can get something from it. So yeah, Rick and Morty, I would say, is probably one of my favourite animations. And I think the bit you're talking about, Jerry's wormhole trip, is what's the name of the clip? I actually used the clip in one of my videos. Is it called like Cosmic Apotheosis or something like that? Yeah, it's an incredibly trippy bit of animation, which I think just, yeah, nails it as far as like when you try and commit on these psychedelic experiences to, you know, like a human format, something like a video or an animation. Yeah, that I would say that is one of the better ones, and I really like that trip. It's one of those that I keep going back to watch over and over again because it's just done so well. The whole bit where it's like, there's a bit where when Jerry first goes into it, it's like, whoa, and he starts like bending around and shifting through it. Yeah, absolutely nails it. Like especially when with something like DMT, where you go into this like, whoa, yeah. So anyway, short answer, yeah, I fucking love Rick and Morty. One of my favourite shows. From Overcool, what about the amazingly easy way we can use DMT with e-cigs, vaporizers now to have a quick psychedelic experience? I'll be honest, I've not done it through an e-cig or something like that. Yeah, I'd heard that it's hard to get like one of these breakthrough experiences from it. So I don't know. I'm speaking from a place of complete ignorance here. So if I get the chance to do it with like a vape pen, I'd do it, and I'd like to see how that compares to something like the vaporize route where you get like a big hit of it in one go. But yeah, well, if I try it, mate, I'll let you know. Right, I'll just do one more question, mate. Let's have a look. So I think the last one. So yeah, I think from Earthworth here. So I have friends that save people's lives with high doses of ketamine, so it's definitely beneficial. But compared to standard serotogenistic psychedelia, especially DMT and 5-MeO, keti's lackluster. So yeah, mate, I know some people who had depression beyond what I could ever describe, and certainly beyond what I ever hope I will ever imagine, you know, have for myself. I mean, I've with some of the retreats that I've been on, I've been with military guys who have like very severe PTSD. This is guys who've like literally seen their friends like get killed around them. So very dehumanizing experiences and very traumatic experiences. And I've seen some of these guys talk about having extremely positive results with ketamine. So don't get me wrong, I'm not demonizing sort of ketamine or saying that it's kind of shit or there's nothing in it. It just wasn't for me. And again, from hearing some of these people talk about it, it does make me think maybe I need to give it another whirl. But yeah, it's again, it's not on my immediate radar, but I fully acknowledge that people have had amazing results from ketamine. So I think it's an interesting one to have there in the picture, but not necessarily for me. It's a bit like cannabis. I don't get anything from cannabis. It's just not my thing. You know, I fully acknowledge that like cannabis is like helping people left, right, and center. But for me, it's just not my cup of tea. So I think that's fine. I think it's fine to be able to sort of say, you know, to be able to pick and choose and know which things work for you, and not everything's going to work for everybody. And yeah, I think I think for me personally, I think I've found the things that work for me, and I'll certainly, you know, dip into other things. I'll try other things, like I tried the what was it called, that thing I did the other day? I've totally forgotten what this stuff is called. But anyway, some other kind of psychedelic. God, yeah, it's just completely slipped my mind what its name was. But yeah, I would cat for the moment off to one side for me. So guys, okay, we're going to run a little bit over time there. So as always, thanks so much for participating. It's always awesome to talk to you guys, and thanks for watching and commenting on all the videos. It's been, yeah, I feel like this month I've had a really good month that I feel like I've had some really sort of good feedback on the stuff I've produced. So, you know, thanks to you guys for taking the time to watch. Thanks for being part of this like sort of little community that we have here. Was it Jonas or Johannes from who won the Chrysanthescope? Get in touch with me again. Send me an email and we'll work out the shipping details on that. And yeah, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to end the stream here, and I'll catch you guys next time. And don't forget, next time, fingers crossed, live guest. So look up Dick Khan. That's the guy I'm going to have on. Think of what questions you want to ask him. And yeah, I think this is going to be, we'll have an awesome time with Dick. And if there are any technical problems, then I'll have worked them all out a bit better than that. So guys, you're awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next time.